My roommate called me his ATM. He didn't know I signed the lease. For 8 months, I paid 70% of the rent in an apartment where my name was the only one on the lease, and I let my roommate believe it was a coin flip who owned the place. Let me back up. Jake moved in through a Craigslist ad I posted. What he never asked, and I never corrected, was whose apartment it actually was. The landlord dealt with me. The lease had one signature, mine. Jake just handed me cash every month and assumed we were equals. We were not equals. But Jake loved acting like the alpha of a place he was a guest in. He ate my labeled food and left gas station gummy bears as payment. He used my $60 knives to open Amazon boxes and chipped every blade. He'd bring 6 strangers over on a Tuesday and tell me I should socialize more. My apartment, my couch they were sitting on. Here's the detail I kept coming back to. Every single month, when he passed me his half, he'd say the same thing. Rent's due, roomie, roomie. Like we were partners, like this was ours. Rent's due, roomie, rent's due, roomie. 8 months of it. Then he started dating my coworker Sarah, and my own home stopped feeling like mine. Her makeup on the sink, her shoes at the door. The two of them cooking with my groceries and leaving the pans crusted for me to scrub at midnight after a double shift. I told myself the rent was cheap. I told myself I was overreacting. Jake was very, very good at making me feel like I was overreacting. Then one night I heard them in the kitchen. "Why is Marcus so weird about his stuff?" Sarah asked. "He's uptight," Jake said. "But it's perfect. Dude pays most of the rent, does all the cleaning, and buys the nice stuff I get to use. He's basically subsidizing me. Why would I ever leave?" They laughed. Both of them, in my kitchen. And I stood in the hallway holding a wall against my chest, because that's when it clicked what I actually was to him. Not a roommate, a wallet that mops. Now, here's where a smarter man would have screamed. I didn't. I said nothing. I went to work the next morning and I called my landlord, the one Jake had never once spoken to, and I asked one question. "How much notice do I owe you to end the lease?" 30 days. I gave it that afternoon. Then I came home and told Jake I was moving out in 2 weeks. His face went white. "You can't just leave me. I can't afford this place alone." "You won't have to afford it," I said. "There isn't going to be a place." He didn't get it yet. He kept negotiating. He'd split utilities different. He'd buy his own food. Sarah could visit less. He said roomie 3 more times, like the word was a rope that could pull us back. 2 weeks later, the movers came for my stuff, and I handed the keys to the landlord, and the landlord posted a notice on the door that Jake read out loud in the hallway with his mouth open. "Unit vacated. New tenant walkthrough Saturday." He turned to me. "Wait, new tenant? You told them we're leaving?" "I told them I'm leaving," I said. "It was never we, Jake. Your name was never on anything. The apartment was mine. You were the guest, the gummy bears, the strangers on my couch, the knives. The whole time, all of it, on my dime, in my home, while he called me the roommate." I watched him do the math backward through 8 months and land exactly where I'd landed in that hallway. He said the only thing left to say, "Then where do I go?" I picked up the last box. "That's a roommate problem, and you don't have one of those anymore." I heard he moved back in with his parents. Motivational quotes in his stories now. Learning from mistakes. But last week I saw him at a coffee shop, all charm, sitting across from some new guy with a lease in front of them. I wanted to walk over and tell that kid one thing. Ask him whose name is on it. But I didn't. I finished my coffee, I told myself it wasn't my business anymore, and I went home to my quiet little studio where nobody ate my food and nobody called me roomie. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. 3 weeks into the new place, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't have saved. I almost let it go. I'm glad I didn't, and I'm also not, because I still don't fully know which. "Marcus? It's Dave, your old landlord." Dave never called. Dave texted, and only about money. So when I heard his actual voice, low and careful, my stomach did the thing it used to do in that hallway. "There's a situation at the old unit," he said. "Jake never fully moved out, and when we did the walkthrough for the new tenant, we found something in your old bedroom. You need to come explain it, because right now your name's the one on the paperwork, and it doesn't look good." My name. Of course it was my name. That had always been the whole point. When Jake wanted to feel powerful, the place was ours. When something went wrong, it was going to be mine. I drove over. The whole way I kept telling myself it was nothing. He left a bike. He punched a wall. He owed for a broken window. Something annoying. Something I'd pay to make disappear, and then I'd be free for real. Dave was standing in the parking lot when I pulled in. He wasn't alone. There was another man next to him in a gray jacket, no name on it, but the kind of stillness that tells you he asks questions for a living. My mouth went dry. "Marcus," Dave said, "this is Detective Reyes." "Detective, I want you to understand. I had done nothing. In 8 months in that apartment, the worst thing I'd done was passive-aggressively label a carton of eggs. But the word detective does something to your body, regardless of your innocence." My hands went cold, and I heard myself say, "What's going on?" in a voice half an octave too high. "Let's go up," Reyes said. The apartment smelled like Jake. That's the first thing. Old cooking oil and cheap body spray. The exact smell I'd spent 3 weeks forgetting. Half his stuff was still there. His shoes at the door, in the spot Sarah's used to be. A game controller on my old couch, which he'd apparently kept, which meant he'd been living there rent-free in a unit that legally didn't have a tenant anymore, which was its own problem, but not the problem. The problem was the bedroom. My old bedroom had a closet with a panel in the back. I'd never touched it. When I moved in, it was screwed shut, and I figured it was an old service hatch. Dead space, not my business. I'd told Jake about it exactly once, offhand, months ago. "Don't even bother. It's sealed." The panel was open now. The screws were on the floor. Inside the dead space, where there should have been insulation and pipes, there were 3 plastic storage bins. And on top of the bins, in a gallon freezer bag, was a stack of prepaid debit cards 2 inches thick, a burner phone, and a spiral notebook full of names and numbers that were very obviously not grocery lists. "You want to tell me about this?" Reyes said. "I have never seen any of that in my life," I said, and I heard how everybody says that, and I heard how true it was, and I understood in one sick drop that those 2 things had nothing to do with each other. Here's the part that saved me, and I didn't even know it at the time. When I moved out, I didn't just hand Dave the keys. I made him do a walkthrough with me, and I filmed it on my phone. Every room, time-stamped. I'd done it because of Jake, because I knew Jake would try to pin damage on me, and I wanted proof the place was clean the day I left. The video showed the closet panel sealed, screwed shut, 3 weeks ago. The bins were dated, receipts inside them, activation slips for the cards, all of it stamped in the last 2 weeks. 2 weeks I'd been across town in a studio Dave himself had helped me find, because Dave owned that building too. I had a landlord as an alibi. I had a time-stamped video as a witness. I had, for once in this entire story, the paperwork on my side. Reyes watched the video twice. Then he asked the question that changed everything. Who else knew about this closet? And I said the truest sentence I'd said in a year. One person. And he told me it was sealed too. But he's the one who told me, which means he's the one who checked. You could see it move across Reyes's face. The panel that was screwed shut when I left. The panel that was open now, the one person who'd been living in a legally empty apartment for 2 weeks, who knew about the dead space, who had a documented history of using other people's things and other people's names and other people's money as if they were his own. Jake didn't hide his operation in that dead space by accident. He hid it in my old bedroom, behind a panel he thought no one would ever open, in a unit he thought was still floating in that gray zone where the place was ours when it helped him. He'd never once in 8 months understood that ours was a story he told himself. He thought if it was ever found, it'd be found in Marcus's apartment, in Marcus's closet, with Marcus's name on the lease. He'd built his whole life on the assumption that when the bill came, it'd land on me. He forgot I moved out. He forgot the lease ended. He forgot that the day I walked, the apartment stopped being a place my name could be blamed for and became a crime scene his fingerprints were all over. Literally. Reyes found them on the panel screws, on the bins, on the burner. Not one of mine anywhere. I'd never touched it. That's the thing about being the guy who labels his eggs and films his own move-out. You leave a very clean trail. They picked Jake up 4 days later, not at his parents'. At a coffee shop, across a table from a guy with a lease in front of him, the new roommate. I know because Dave told me, and Dave knew because the arrest happened in one of his other building's ground-floor cafes, and the poor kid across the table apparently sat there frozen while 2 officers walked Jake out mid-sentence. Mid-charm. Jake had been 3 minutes from signing another person into another apartment where the name on the paper wouldn't be his. Same play. New mark. He never learned, he just got better at hiding who he was, exactly like I'd thought at that coffee shop, and if I'd walked over that day and asked the kid whose name was on the lease, maybe I'd have blown it up early. Maybe Jake would have walked. Maybe the panel never gets opened, the new kid moves in, and 18 months from now it's his phone buzzing with a number he doesn't have saved. I think about that more than I want to. Sarah reached out after it hit the local news. Short message. "I'm sorry I laughed in your kitchen." That was it. I didn't answer for a week. When I finally did, all I wrote back was, "It was my kitchen." I don't know if she got it. I meant it as the whole story. The detective called one more time, months later, to tell me the notebook cracked open something bigger than Jake. The names in it weren't customers. They were other people, other Marcuses, other leases, other closets, other guys who'd posted a Craigslist ad and let a charming stranger move in and assume the place was half his. Jake had done this before, more than once. He had a pattern of finding the quiet guy with the good job and the nice things and the lease in his own name and turning that man's home into storage he'd never be blamed for. I was supposed to be number 4. The reason I wasn't is stupid and small, and I still can't get over it. It's not the video. It's not the alibi. It's this. When Jake handed me his rent that final month, the last time, before he knew, before any of it, he said it like always. Rent's due, roomie. And I remember thinking, standing there with his cash in my hand, that if this were really ours, he'd have signed something. In 8 months, he never once asked to be on the lease, never once wanted his name on the place he called ours. And a man doesn't leave his name off a thing he actually thinks is his. He leaves his name off a thing he plans to walk away from. I just didn't know yet what he planned to leave behind in the walking. I signed a new lease last month. Bigger place. 2 bedrooms. I've got a roommate again, a coworker I've known for years. Boring and honest and dull in the best way. We split everything down the middle, both our names on the paper. His idea, actually. He said he wouldn't move in any other way, said only one name on a lease is how one person ends up holding the whole bag. I laughed when he said it. Then I signed fast, before he could see my face. There's a closet in my new bedroom. First week in, I unscrewed every panel in the whole apartment, checked every dead space, every hatch, every inch of dark I couldn't see into. My new roommate found me on the floor with a flashlight and a screwdriver at 11 at night and asked what I was doing. I told him I was just making sure the place was empty. He said, "Why wouldn't it be?" And I looked at that clean, hollow, ordinary space behind the wall, and for 1 second I saw 3 plastic bins and a bag of cards that were never mine, in a home that was, and I said the only thing that felt honest, because it was somebody's before it was ours, and I've learned to check what people leave behind. He thought I was being weird about a closet. I let him think it. Some nights, though, when the apartment's quiet and both our names are sitting on that lease in the drawer, I think about Jake in a coffee shop, mid-sentence, mid-smile, getting walked out into the light. I think about the kid across the table who never signed. I think about the 3 men before me who did. And I think about the panel screws on my old bedroom floor, and how the whole time he was hiding his life in my walls, he was still calling me roomie. He was right about one thing. In the end, it was the perfect setup. He just picked the one guy who films his own move out,